Welcome to Gutsy Talks. I'm Rachel Larson, your host, naturopath and nutritionist, and I'm here to have real, honest conversations that can help you heal your gut, calm your mind, and fall back in love with food. Together with leading health experts, we'll dive into all things gut health and explore the deep connections between your gut and overall well-being, so you can feel empowered to take control of your health and live your best life. If you love all things gut health, follow me for more on Instagram at rachel.larson or head to rachellarson.com.au. Now, let's get into today's episode. Today, we're joined by a truly special guest who is transforming lives by helping women achieve lasting skin confidence. Asha Evertsz is a naturopath, corneotherapist, and beauty therapist with over 13 years of expertise in treating adult acne, skin overgrowths, and complex skin concerns. As an award-winning corneotherapist, she takes a holistic, science-backed approach working with the skin microbiome from the outside in and the inside out to uncover the root cause of persistent skin issues. So, if you've ever battled stubborn acne or felt frustrated by skin concerns that just won't budge, this episode is for you. Welcome, Asha.
Thank you so much. What a lovely welcome, Rachel.
Look, I'm so keen to speak your praises. As I was just saying to you before we jumped on, is I've known you for like 9-10 years as the go-to person for skin. So to have you here just feels like, I guess, a 10-year journey.
Oh, shucks. And then we found out that we live around the corner from each other.
Exactly.
So that's even more exciting.
Yeah, we're going to be coffee pals or something.
Exactly. I love that.
So tell us, how did you become this go-to in the skin world? Like, what's your journey?
Oh gosh. Yeah, thank you. It's been quite a journey, and I guess it's been a long time in the making. So I suppose like with most people who get very passionate about their specialty, I had a personal journey with my skin. So, I had perfect skin as a teenager. I had perfect skin in my mid-20s. And again, this is why I'm so passionate about adult acne specifically. I came off the pill in my mid-20s after a savage breakup where I was heartbroken and very stressed. Not the right time to come off the pill, by the way.
For sure.
And yeah, I had extraordinarily bad cystic acne. Which was devastating at that time, like talk about, kicking you when you're down.
Yeah.
So I had a journey where I was on and off the pill for maybe another 6 years after that, just because I didn't know what to do. And I tried the extremes of everything, so I studied to become a naturopath, primarily because of my own skin. I was really curious. And then towards the end of my skin studies, I really sort of realized with my own skin, because I also had, melasma as a side effect of the pill, which no one talks about when you're putting you on the pill. And I had very bad congestion. So my skin the texture was quite bad. And so I really realized that I needed to learn about skin from the outside in as well. I mean, it's an amazing organ. We can't touch our liver. We can't touch our kidneys.
No.
But we can with our skin. And so we have this unique opportunity to be able to utilize treatments from the outside in, which I'm very passionate about as well. So yeah, I started my beauty therapy diploma, and then I went on to become a qualified practicing corneotherapist, which is a special type of skin therapist, where we actually do no harm to the defense systems of the skin, so the skin barrier, the skin microbiome, and the acid mantle, which is the pH of the skin. So in many ways, I treat the skin from the outside in, similarly to we treat the gut from the inside out. But look, that was my journey through my own skin. And then obviously, in student clinic, all I was attracting was skin cases. Yeah. None of my supervisors wanted to know. Nobody wanted to deal with skin. Skin's too hard. Yeah. And so that just further fueled my passion that I was going to learn everything I could so I could help. I healed my own skin. And so I was really, really passionate about helping other people do the same.
Wow. I mean, what a journey. And the fact that you saw that there was such a gap in what people were accessing, like what could they access? The same things that caused the issues. Like, I can understand why that was just like, this is the fuel that I need to go exactly where I need to go. And hearing your story, I'm sure so many people will resonate with. Every journey is unique, but post-pill acne is, something I know that we'll talk about. And I think along the way, I'll even share a bit about my experience with acne, which is also a terrible journey. It's not a fun one, but I'm smiling and fresh faced on the other side. So I think that's also a sign that things can change. So I guess let's talk about acne. It sounds like a really basic question, but what is acne? I think it gets a lot of
Mm.
names, and I don't know, it's a kind of like just spots. So what is acne?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting one because we've got the traditional understanding of how the pathophysiology of how we develop acne in our skin. And this is what we've lent on for decades and decades, which has frustrated me no end because, yes,
Mm,
this is a part of it, but it's not the only part, which is why people feel stuck. So
mm,
let's talk about that. So basically, what is happening within the skin is a four-step process. So we're getting an excess of sebum production, which could be an excess of sebum production, could be the wrong kind of sebum.
mm-hmm,
You don't have to have oily skin to get acne. Okay,
mm.
that's just definitely a myth. So it's an excess of sebum production or the wrong kind of sebum. So it's kind of like thick and sticky like custard when it
Yep,
should be like free flowing.
yep.
And usually that could be affected by androgen hormones. And
Like
then the next,
testosterone, is that what you mean for people that
yeah,
are,
like
yeah, yep, those type of things.
DHT in
Yep,
particular.
yep, yep,
And then, we've got, I don't want to digress too much, but our
for
skin's
sure.
got its own endocrine system that's
Yep.
separate to the hormones that we've got in the rest of our body. So when you do a blood test of hormones, it's showing you what's circulating in your blood. It's not showing you what's in your skin and
Yes.
whether you have an increased sensitivity to DHT, which is the stronger form of testosterone. So there's
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the second step, we'll talk about sebum. Second step is we've got something called abnormal keratinization within the hair follicle. So basically, the hair follicle is producing excess keratin, and then there's a buildup of these cells, which is plugging the pore
Hmm.
and forming that comedone.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next sort of traditional area would be number three, would be then that creates a really yummy, nice oxygen-free environment for an overgrowth of acne bacteria, and they start rapidly multiplying. And then as a result of that, we get immune system activation, which causes the inflammation, the redness, the pus.
Mm.
And so that's the formation of a breakout. So as I said, conventional therapeutic approaches have only focused on these factors.
Mm.
However, we do understand that there's a much bigger picture at play. And as
Mm.
well as that localized pathophysiology, there's progressively emerging evidence indicating that there are underlying systemic factors
Mm.
that are inflammatory generated. So anything that can generate inflammation systemically, like the gut,
Mm.
is going to trigger that cascade within the skin.
Wow. I think this is like the missing piece of the puzzle. Like you said, it's like if the four-step process that you've just gone through, which is clearly already fairly complex, but if that was the start and the end of acne, we wouldn't have issues. There is clearly more to the picture. Let us talk about what is the systemic issues that are really driving this acne picture as well as what's happening on a skin level.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, anything, like I said, anything that causes systemic inflammation is going to trigger those inflammatory signaling pathways that is going to set off breakouts in some people,
Mm.
not in everyone.
Yeah.
And that's when we can talk about genetics and things like that.
Yeah.
So you could have two people who have an inflammatory gut issue, and only one of them is going to be showing that
Yes.
as breakouts in their face. Not everyone is going to show that.
Yeah.
Part of the reason that is because acne specifically is mTOR driven anabolic and inflammatory skin disease. And what I mean by that
Yeah.
is
Unpack that, please.
mTOR stands for mammalian target of rapamycin,
Yep.
and it is essentially a protein that is overstimulated by Western diet and inflammation that can lead to acne.
Yep.
It has a direct effect on the sebaceous gland. It causes overstimulation in the sebaceous gland. It can trigger sebum. It can trigger the hyperkeratinization. And so what we're looking at is we're looking at if there is a kickoff of the inflammatory signaling pathways because you have systemic inflammation,
Mm.
and you may have a genetic predisposition to the mTOR skin connection
Yep.
that is going to result in breakouts.
Yep. Yep. Is talking about genetics, I think this is where obviously we need to be individualizing treatments because no two people are the same, genetic and otherwise. Is there a way at the moment to test it? Is that something that you prioritize as genetic testing, or is it a fact that, or is it just kind of like if you have this issue, we can maybe, assume that you have the genes for which that would then be an issue? Is that how to, how
I
does it
think,
work?
yeah, I think you've
Yeah.
nailed it there.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
someone's presenting with breakouts, we can assume that
Yes.
they're in that. So people who break out, it's a hard one to quantify because there's no acne gene.
Yep.
So you might have a mum with a sticky cell gene and a dad with a bit of a wonky sebum gene, and you put them together. You know what I mean? Like it's not like as straightforward as there's an acne gene.
Yeah.
So it's other factors that they're looking at, and it's estimated, and it's so hard to determine, but it's
Mm.
estimated that about 78% of people who have acne, it's a genetic variable. So it's part of the genetics. But as
Mm.
we know,
Yeah.
genetics aren't the problem. It's
Yeah.
kicked off by lifestyle, kicked off by stress, kicked off
Yeah.
by inflammation.
Hugely.
And a lot of people will say, yeah, my sister has had really significant acne, my mum or my dad has had really significant acne.
Mm.
And that's an easy way to tell if there's a genetic component as
Yeah.
well. But
Yeah.
would you like me to go through like what I see in clinical practice as being those inflammatory drivers as well?
I think me and everybody else watching would love to know exactly what these things are. We're like, what are the categories of inflammation we need to be aware of?
Okay, there's quite a few. And
Yep.
so what I'm doing when I'm doing a new client intake is I'm being an inflammation hunter.
Yep.
So I'm primarily looking for where these driving factors of inflammation are coming from. And so then we can actually do some testing and expand upon that and find the root cause.
Hmm.
Okay, so we've got stress. So stress is a biggie.
Yep.
We've got typical Western diet and milk and dairy consumption, but also metabolism if there's irregularities with insulin, as if there's insulin resistance.
Hmm.
We've got dysbiosis of the gut, and not only the gut microbiome, but the skin microbiome.
Mm.
So very important. And the gut microbiome will influence the skin microbiome. So one of the things I'm always assessing is, do I feel like this person potentially has a commensal skin overgrowth?
Yeah.
Do we need to test for that? Do we need to treat that?
Yeah.
And then we've got hormonal fluctuations, which has been like 90% of the conversation up until this
Yes.
point, especially for people that go and see their derm or their doctor. I will just make a reference to that in my clinical practice. I would say that less than 1% of my clients have got acne that's caused by hormones.
And so, yeah, because people always say, I've got hormonal acne. It's because I
Yeah,
have too much estrogen. And,
yeah,
you hear it, more than 1% of people are saying that,
yeah,
and it clearly it's not as straightforward as having estrogen equals acne either, even
yeah,
if that was what they thought was going on.
absolutely. It shits me. I have to
Yeah.
say, it's coming from this narrative
Mm.
that it's hormonal, therefore we need to give birth control,
Yes.
because that's the option,
Mm.
and it really, really grinds my gears. So if we want to talk about hormonal acne, can we like spin it and
Mm.
say it's much more likely to be cortisol, it's much more likely to be insulin.
Yeah, for people who don't know, they are also hormones. It's not just your reproductive hormones, like they are also hormones. Sorry,
Hmm.
but I just had to really make that clear because it's like they're also part of our hormonal system.
100%, 100%. And that is a lot of the work that I do is
Yeah.
on cortisol and insulin. But then we've also got
Mm.
potentially methylation issues affecting detoxification. We could have like more than dysbiosis of the gut. So we could have celiac, we could have inflammatory bowel disease, we could have an raging E. coli infection, which
Mm.
I see quite a lot of. We can have thyroid issues. Heavy metals is a big one I test for.
Yep.
That gets missed a lot otherwise. Liver, gallbladder, Gilbert syndrome,
Yep.
mineral and micronutrient deficiencies or excesses like copper.
Yep.
Copper as an excess will cause acne. Mold and mycotoxins, but that not so much acne, that's more kind of like skin rashes in my
Yep.
experience.
Yep.
And then pore cloggers in foundation, pore
Wow.
cloggers in skincare.
So what we're putting and using on our skin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Big, that's a big one. Yeah.
So you have just in that list made it so clear that why like single interventions usually never ever work is because you've listed probably 50, and that was probably a shortened list for the podcast of different intricacies within those. Can we please talk about stress a bit more? Because I honestly think every single person I will talk to on this podcast, and I'm making clearly a big statement for what we're three, four episodes in, maybe five by now, but I just honestly think our nervous system and the hormones associated with that is the root cause to all of our health issues. Like
Oh, yeah.
clearly not necessarily because we've mentioned other things, they're involved, but like our nervous system has to be supported. It has to be looked at. Like it's just it people we're constantly mentioning it when we're talking about chronic health issues.
Mm.
Tell me, like, how is it exactly that cortisol and stress
Mm.
trigger this acne cycle?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm totally with you there. I think it is absolutely like the number one thing that derails health
Yep.
and skin.
Yep.
And it's also just such a big blocker to healing as well. So we can be doing all the right things, but if that
Mm-hmm.
stress is still present, then we're going to be really struggling to correct that.
Yes.
So let's have a look at this in a couple of different ways. So I think that we need to, a big conversation that I have with well, all my clients are female pretty much. So big conversation I have with all my clients is that what's your morning routine and what's your nighttime routine? Because that will tell me so much about someone and so much about their likelihood of stress as
Mm-hmm.
well. So I'll get them to detail, especially their morning routine, in a great amount of detail, because as we know as practitioners, that first hour upon waking is when we have the cortisol awakening response.
Mm-hmm. So when our cortisol is kind of at its highest.
Yeah, cortisol is naturally at its highest
Yep.
to get us out of bed, to get us moving. And so we're either harnessing that in the first hour and really working with it, or we're absolutely like setting ourselves up for challenges
Yep.
for the rest of the day. So, it's an hour that's the most precious hour of the day as far as I'm concerned. So I'll ask someone in a great amount of detail what they're doing in that hour, because that will tell me what is happening with their cortisol awakening response outside of, what else is going on as stress for them. So
Mm-hmm.
a conversation we have as well is that, yes, emotional stress is a really big factor, but physiological stress is just as big of a factor that people don't recognize as much. And often you need to bring it to the consciousness
Mm.
that actually, if you're going and doing high intensity in the morning without eating first,
Yeah.
that's really going to increase your cortisol. If you're having a coffee in the morning, especially in that first hour, 75 minutes, that's really going to increase your cortisol. If you're scrolling on your phone, if you're rushing out the door, if you're not eating a protein forward breakfast, cortisol, cortisol, cortisol. So
Yeah.
that's I think a really important thing to understand, because when we're having that conversation about stress, it can be really disempowering to say to
Mm.
someone, yes, your acne is driven by stress, but then not giving them activating tools to change that in their day-to-day life.
Yeah.
So I go in with the premise that every person is stressed. Um, and then we use the tools in our toolkit to really start to modify that, particularly with morning and nighttime routines.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then, we know that with the gut brain skin axis, it
Mm.
demonstrates that stress will weaken the gut lining,
Yeah.
causing intestinal permeability. We know it's going to drain our secretory IgA, which is our immunity. We know it's going to drain our digestive enzymes and acids, which are extremely important in
Crucial.
acne. So it's
Yeah.
going to have a really big impact, and it's going to affect our beneficial bacteria as well. So it's going to have all of those effects on the gut, which is then going to cause problems within the skin, which I know we're going to unpack in more detail.
You bet. And I think, the way that you approach people that are clearly stressed with such empathy is what we need. I do believe that stress is, as I said, the most important, but also almost the most difficult thing to change. There are things where it is like you can take a supplement, you can take a herbal tea, you can do things and you'll make things better. But your nervous system is about lifestyle changes, and everybody's got a different level of demand on them and the way that they're approaching the world. They've got all these different things. Our nervous system is very complex. So I think it's worth saying that be kind to yourself and be very patient in that journey, because it is the most worthwhile thing that you'll do, but it probably will take the longest. Not to set you up for like, oh gosh, this is going to be a forever journey, but please, be
Yeah.
realistic about, I guess, what you can achieve in certain periods of time. That would be my kind of thoughts
Mm.
on that, as someone who also works with that real gut nervous system
Yeah.
connection too.
It's a lifelong goal. And
Yep.
I explain that to my clients. Like my nervous system regulation is a lifetime, like work
Yep.
in progress. Yours will be as well, but let's
Yep.
at least give you the tools and the
Yeah.
strategies so that,
Yep.
let's get you sleeping between 8 and 10 hours a night. Let's
Yep.
get you supercharging your morning routine. Let's
Yep.
get you off stimulants. So like, let's do all of those things without using herbs and supplements
Mm,
as a band-aid,
absolutely.
because then when they come in after all that, they're going to be really impactful.
Yes. Oh, look, perfectly said. I am dying to go into the microbiome. What is the go? How is our microbiome, given how incredibly complex it is? Let's talk about that and how
Yeah,
it affects our skin.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about the gut microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because the skin microbiome is the second biggest microbiome of the body.
Yes.
And
And different,
that's
please, like,
very different.
very
Yeah,
different. So
very.
we
Yeah,
want, and I'm sure you'll get into it, but like
yeah,
we want different microbes on our skin than what we do in our gut,
yeah,
just like we want different species in our mouth, we want different species in our vagina. Like our bodies have different microbe communities there. So talk about the gut microbiome,
yeah,
certain profiles of microbiomes, certain organisms, or
yeah.
yeah, like you tell me, what is the connection?
Well, as you know, I am a huge fan of gut health for skin health,
Yes.
and I probably do stool testing on about 85 to 90% of my clients.
Hmm.
And so it's a very big part of the work that we do together. And it can actually give us the most incredible results quite quickly as well. I've seen it firsthand time and time again. So that makes me even more excited to share.
Yeah. Because it's about that targeted information, targeted treatments that you can then apply. You're not
Absolutely.
flying blind anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah. And look, I do see trends as well.
Mhm.
So we need to test everyone, because we know that a lot of people the only symptom they may have may be their skin. They might not have any gut symptoms.
Yeah.
And so we do need to test. And I explain that to my clients, and they usually get pretty excited to get into the testing as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it probably is my favorite test to do. But we understand that the gut microbiota has a wide array of benefits or like detriments to the skin, depending on the state of the gut. We also know that the gut microbiota is an important regulator of estrogen and androgen metabolism.
Yep.
So we can't fix hormones without fixing the gut either. So it's really important to understand that. And what we need to know is there is a gut skin axis. So I referred to the when we're talking about stress, we're talking
Mm.
about the brain skin axis, and there's
Mhm.
even a gut brain skin axis.
Of
Like
course
it's
there is.
all connected. But basically, with the gut skin axis, is what we're saying is that gut microbiomes can either make immune cells that calm the skin or inflame the
Mm.
skin. Okay, when we
Mm.
put it really simply. And so when your gut is out of balance, it can send more inflammatory messages. And we know that if you've got a leaky gut,
Yep.
then it's going to allow harmful microbes to escape the lumen of the gut and into the bloodstream. And some of them really like going on holiday to the skin. So
Why
why
not?
not? Why not? So we've got your staph and we've got your strep, and they actually really love escaping the lumen of the gut, packing their bags and making their way to the skin and causing a lot of inflammation
Mm.
and impact on that as well.
Mm.
So we know with research that what it's saying is that people with acne have differences in their microbiome to people without acne.
Yep.
So we've got, lower diversity of good, friendly, commensal protective bacteria. So there's less variety.
Mhm.
We've got fewer beneficial bacteria that are making short chain fatty acids. And short chain fatty acids are everything to the skin,
Yep.
which I'll explain. We've got increased potential for LPS producing bacteria like E. coli and Klebsiella. And when we've got a permeable gut, they're going to get into the bloodstream and cause inflammation. Anytime there's a leaky gut and we've got proteins and bacteria escaping into the bloodstream, causing an immune reaction
Mm.
that causes inflammation, it's going to cause problems for people's skin a lot of the time.
Yep.
There's a really interesting link with H. pylori. So I don't know about you, but I see H. pylori a lot.
Yep. And that's Helicobacter pylori, just for
Correct.
anyone who didn't know what the H was. So
Yeah.
talk to explain, I guess, give a little bit of a background of what that is and what that link is with acne.
Sure. So Helicobacter pylori is a really common bacteria. It's estimated that about 50% of people have it. Some people are symptomatic, some people don't have symptoms. It's transmitted through saliva, so it's
Mm.
really easy to pick up.
Yep.
And that's fun chats, with people when we've picked it up in their testing about what we're going to do with their partners. But anyway.
Yeah. Treat the whole family.
Treat the whole family. And so what it does is it burrows into the stomach lining and it releases urea. So it doesn't like the acidity of the gut.
Hmm.
It likes to release urea to neutralize the strong acid of the stomach and create a buffer zone around it to protect it from
Yeah.
the strong acids. And this has a bit of a flow-on effect then to the rest of the gut. And the way that I explain it to my clients is if I'm seeing low stomach acid and low pancreatic elastase,
Yep.
and if I'm seeing a Helicobacter pylori, I'm saying it's kind of like you've gone away for the weekend and someone's come into your house, like maybe your mum's feeding the cat and accidentally mum's turned the thermostat way, way down on the fridge,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so when you come back from your, mini break, all this funky stuff is growing on everything in the fridge.
Yep.
And the problem isn't the funky stuff. The problem
Yes.
is the thermostat
Yep.
got turned right down.
Yep.
And so when we have H. pylori and when we have low stomach acid,
Mm.
effectively our thermostat's been turned right down, which is our pH has been altered. And
Mm.
that leads the way for an uprising of all the funky stuff, which
Yeah.
is a lot of other bacteria.
Yeah, because our we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago with our a microbiome chat with Dr. Brad Leach, and he was explaining about the pH in our stomach and having a strong and acidic pH in our stomach is that killer protective thing. So again, that thermostat, your fridge picture that we're thinking of, but literally speaking, we're talking about we want our stomach to be acid, and it's fascinating that this microbe will change this environment, influence environment to its benefit. Doesn't matter about the host. The host is going to go through a whole lot of issues because of this organism. And I guess people may be aware of H. pylori, not necessarily related to acne, even though, like we're saying, there's a big connection there, but related to reflux or peptic ulcer disease issues. So anything I guess, yeah, gastritis-y, that type of thing, you may have been screened for, spoken about in terms of H. pylori. But I guess what you're saying is that its effects just keep changing.
Well, it gets even better. So there's a direct link between H. pylori and acne. So
Yes.
in the research, it says that people with severe acne, 80% of them will have H. pylori. And people with moderate
Wow.
acne, 72% of them will have moderate acne.
And is this related to, I guess, behind that, is it kind of making that link between the fact that that pH in the stomach has been affected and therefore then all of the changes that happen in our digestion, like the way that we digest food, extract nutrients, allow for different microbes, like is it kind of like, is that what they're saying is the big link?
Well, there's an even more interesting link. And yes, that is all very much a factor. And anytime I see stomach acid go down, I am on high alert because
Mm-hmm.
it really impacts skin.
Yep.
But there's a theory that with H. pylori, that it actually inactivates something called FOXO1 in
Mhm.
the gastric cells. So remember we talked about mTOR as
Yep.
being a really big factor for most people with acne.
Yeah.
It increases tissue growth,
Yes.
and so it increases the chance of the follicle getting clogged. Well, FOXO1 is the antagonist of mTOR. So FOXO1 will deactivate mTOR if
Ah,
it's too high.
yeah.
And when we've got H. pylori, it inactivates FOXO1 in the gastric cells.
Wow. That is
Yeah.
just so like I'm smiling because I'm like, the nerd in me is just so happy to hear that level of science. And it just speaks to the how complicated and connected that we are. Like this whole our skin as its own organ is just completely blown out of the water when you hear about these connections. So I
Absolutely.
guess if somebody has a perfect gut or doesn't have any microbiome issues,
Mm,
I guess like you've mentioned heaps of other things that are going on. Is this where we might have detoxification issues, stress is their issues?
mm,
Is it all the other things that are
mm.
contributing to that? Because I think, yeah, like, I don't know. Can you have a
Yeah.
perfect gut but have acne?
I've seen it. It's
Yeah,
not common.
yeah,
It's not common.
yeah.
But, and I do want to reference that I think parasites are a big thing with acne. And,
Particular types?
uh, not necessarily. I
Yeah,
mean, Blastodientamoeba seem to come up quite
yeah,
often.
yeah,
But in my experience, depending on where they are in the life cycle, they're not always going to come up on testing.
yeah.
So, my advice to other practitioners potentially is if you don't see anything, okay, there's a couple of things that I just want to mention with gut testing if I can, that I see a
Yeah,
lot of.
yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
So I'm usually not everyone's first go at the rodeo. I'm usually like the third naturopath that people have seen.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple of things. If you don't see anything on a stool test, really dig in with your questioning around symptoms for parasites,
Hmm.
because in my experience, they're not always going to show up on a stool test,
Yeah.
just because if they're in the egg phase of their life cycle and they're not in the stool. So you need to dig in with those questions and find that out. Looking at the iron B12 deficiencies as well, looking at the other issues that may arise, grinding teeth, itchy bum, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then also what I'm seeing is there's maybe not enough attention paid to short chain fatty acids.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at reports, I'm really looking at those short chain fatty acid producers,
Hmm.
and I'm looking at the friendly commensal bacteria, and I'm looking at the bacterial phyla,
Hmm.
and I will pay great attention to that because it's going to have a massive impact on someone's skin
Yeah.
if they're having any issues with short chain fatty acids. You don't need to have an overgrowth for your
Yeah.
gut to impact on your skin.
Yeah. And, the same goes for just gut issues. Like, you don't have to have the nastiest of nasty things located. You can have a lack of or an inefficient amount or insufficiency of your beneficials and these byproducts that you make. And those short chain fatty acids are these beautiful fuel for our gut. They're antioxidant in nature. They have immune modulating effects. Like, they're the gold stars. We want all of like we want them. So if we don't
Yeah,
have them, like what you're saying, it doesn't have to be nasty bugs. It can just be maybe
yeah.
not enough of that stuff.
It
And
can be, yeah,
yeah,
exactly. It can be just not enough short chain fatty acids because they affect the skin profoundly,
mm,
profoundly. And we've actually got short chain fatty acids being produced by our skin microbiome as well.
So tell us about our skin microbiome a bit more. I don't think we don't hear enough about it. I mean, we don't hardly know the
Mm.
gut, so I'm sure we hardly know the skin. So what's the go?
Look, this is an area that I'm really passionate about,
Hmm.
and I'm really wanting to spread the word about, I did reference that the skin is the second largest microbiome in the body. We've got trillions of bacteria per square centimeter of the face.
Yep.
And what I say about the difference between the gut microbiome and the skin microbiome is that the gut is like a juicy jungle.
Hmm.
It's like a juicy tropical jungle with its environment.
Yep.
And the skin is like the Sahara Desert because we're facing the environment
Yeah.
constantly. So
Yeah.
they're very different in the way that they behave. And
Mm.
if we try and do the same thing we would do for the gut on top of the skin, it's probably not going to take effect. But one of the biggest myths that I want to bust about
Look,
the
yes, I know
skin.
what you're talking about. We have to talk about. Okay, go for it, Asha.
So, for a very, very long time, the C. acnes bacteria has been villainized as
Mhm.
being the cause of acne.
Yeah.
And we have got a billion-dollar industry that is geared towards destroying the C. acnes bacteria
Yeah.
topically through, we've got your topical medications, and so antibiotics topically,
Yeah.
and then you've got all of your other sort of things that you can buy at the pharmacy, benzoyl peroxide and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so for a very long time, decades and decades, people have been like absolutely like bombing the crap out of their skin to get rid of their acne.
Mm.
What we're beginning to understand now is that actually the C. acnes bacteria has got lots of different species, and only some of them are pathogenic and causing
Mm.
problems. And
Mm.
actually, it is the biggest species on our skin. Everyone on the planet has the C. acnes bacteria on their skin, and the health of the good strains of C. acnes bacteria will determine the health of the skin.
Yeah.
And so we've really got to understand that the more we use all of these topicals, and it doesn't even have to be really aggressive topicals either. It can be any skincare that's got preservatives in it or
Yeah.
emulsifiers in it. Like a preservative is going to wash out the good bacteria in the skin.
Yeah.
And so we are seeing a really big movement towards living bacteria used topically.
Yep.
And
Yes.
even topical application of short chain fatty acids. The problem is that the short chain fatty acids, I understand, are quite stinky. They have like a really bad odor. So
Oh,
no one's been successful in kind of bringing a product to market. But look, Rachel, I might be out of a job in a couple of years. Like someone's going to come up with a way to modulate the skin microbiome.
look, I highly doubt that. I think from what you've mentioned about the internal world, because like, and I guess you're highlighting now the importance of inside out and outside in. Sure, someone might have a stink-free butyrate and probiotic spray, which is incredible for the skin. But if they've got all this disruption on the inside, I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you'll survive.
It's exciting times in any regard. There
Yeah.
is a big shift, and my prediction is the skin microbiome is going to be the newest thing in the next 5 years that everyone's talking about and everyone's
Yeah.
aware of.
Yeah.
And we'll be like, oh my gosh, we can't believe that we were stripping and bleaching and, doing all these, microblading the skin.
Yeah. I think it's going to have that glow up that the gut did about 10 years ago when everyone's like, oh, I've just heard of gut health. And we're like, well, we've always had it. We're just like learning about it. It's not a new thing, it's just new in awareness. Much needed, much overdue, but also like very exciting. Would you say, I guess, to summarize, and there's a lot to summarize, but the root cause of acne, is it inflammation?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're seeing even in the newer research, when we're stepping back from that four-step pathophysiology that I shared before,
Hmm.
the inflammation is found 6 weeks before there's a breakout. So when
Mm,
there's a microcomedone, there's
yeah.
inflammatory cytokines found.
Yeah. And that can be, I guess, an interesting thing because people would be like, oh, I had pizza and I drank wine on the weekend, but what you're saying is that it could even be things that they were doing whatever like weeks back. And
Absolutely.
which is important to know, but it can also make the what's causing my acne, I'm trying to figure that out, a nightmare if you're not aware that in fact there's a bit of a lag in terms of maybe that inflammatory response in the body to then
Yeah.
present in the skin.
Yeah, absolutely. And people are different as well. So some people will say, I did this and the next day,
Yeah.
for me, if I eat cheese,
Mm.
still, like even after, looking after my gut and stress and all that, if I eat cheese, guaranteed a day or two later, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to have some breakouts
Yeah.
on my neck. So it's one of those things where I guess it's like any inflammatory disease, it can be chronic or it can be acute, right?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
looking at all shades.
Yeah. And differences in people. Like, you may have patients that in time may be able to tolerate milk and dairy of different forms and different quantities. And there are some who just can't. And, that's just
Yeah.
where we need to embrace individuality. It sounds like such a woo-woo thing to say, but like it really is about saying, hey, I need to be straight with myself. How does my body best perform? How do I feel best in my body? And I guess trying to understand what that is, because it's going to look different for
Yeah.
everybody.
Absolutely. And that's my job is
Mm.
to help people become their own steward
Yeah,
and to, guide them to really then they're telling me, that, because that is the work. That
yeah.
is the work, is education, is the consciousness around things. And
Mm.
so that people intimately understand their own body and the
Yeah,
way that things work and their own individual triggers.
yeah.
That's a job well done.
Yeah, look, I'm exactly the same. We need to be empowered with how we support ourselves in whatever our issue is, whatever our big symptom and flare is. Like we need to know how to support ourselves on an ongoing sense. I want to get into some debunking. Is there, and I'm already smiling because again, off recording, you're already kind of telling me about this thing that you can't wait to share. So, what are some big fads, things that you're seeing online that you're just like, stop doing, taking, being associated with this? It's doing more harm than good. Go for it.
I mean, how long have you got? But I will try and keep it relevant. And I was sharing with you before that I can, throw shade at, acne meds and benzoyl peroxide all day, and everyone will be very accommodating. But as
Mm,
soon as I start questioning anything that's, natural, people
yeah,
get very annoyed because I'm a naturopath and,
yeah.
yeah.
Yes, all natural stuff is good, but
All
again,
natural stuff is good.
yeah.
But look, I've always, always, always said to people that I don't feel that they should make their own skincare.
Mhm.
Look, one of the reasons that I became a corneotherapist and why I did my beauty therapy diploma before that was because I worked in a natural health clinic when I was at uni, when I was studying to be a naturopath and a beauty therapist. And I worked in a lovely, lovely natural health clinic and I was managing reception and they made their own skincare.
Mm.
And what I noticed was that a lot of people were bringing this skincare back and they were saying that it had caused a lot of problems in their skin. And then when I went on to do my studies, I started to understand, well, no wonder they were using essential oils. And
Ah,
no wonder these ingredients weren't stored at the right temperature. And no wonder these ingredients weren't pH correct.
mm.
We need to adhere to cosmetic science always.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like, what I'm saying is beef tallow is the new coconut oil.
Yes. Yep. It's
Yeah.
it's honestly it's making its way. Like it's on everyone's algorithm at the moment, at least mine anyway as well. Tell me why it's such a problem.
Yeah. I'm not a fan. Um,
Clearly. Why is that a problem?
it's a problem because it's a pore clogger. It's a
Yeah.
pore clogger, people.
We don't
You
want that.
know, I will eat it all day. If there's a cafe and they're like, we cook in beef tallow, I'm like, yummy, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Please, I want to be eating that. It is highly, I'm not even gonna. at 13 years and I can't even say this properly. It's comedogenic,
Yeah.
and its rating is on a range out of 5 from 2 to 3, which makes it over 50% likely to cause breakouts. Okay,
Yeah.
so there's that when we put it really simply. The second issue I have is that we've got beef tallow as a food, and
Hmm.
we've got cosmetic products that are made from beef tallow. So we can't just I really wanted to say that we can't just say it's all good or it's all bad, right? Because
Yes.
I'm not across everything from where we've got, beef tallow that we use to, fry food in,
Yeah.
to a cosmetic preparation, which potentially has been pH regulated and
Yeah.
they've hit more requirements and they've added things in to amend some of the fatty acids that I perceive to be a problem, right? So
Hmm.
before everyone gets upset with me, I'm like talking more about beef tallow,
Yeah.
and not, cosmetic preparations that may have been made by someone who has been qualified in cosmetic chemistry. Very
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
But my understanding is, yes, it's pore clogging. It's got a very high oleic acid content. So the oleic acid content is 47% when
Hmm.
our skin naturally has 1.9%.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
need more linoleic acid and more ceramides in
Mm.
skincare that is going to be supporting our skin barrier.
Mm. That's, and I can understand why people being like the oversimplification of like that's got oleic acid, our skin's got oleic acid, therefore it helps. But there is too much of a good thing, like 47
Absolutely.
versus like what near 2%. Like, mate, that's crazy amounts compared to what your skin wants. So I can see
Absolutely.
why people would rationalize, but
Yeah.
the science says different.
So if you were meant to eat in your diet 1.9% of something and you sat down every day and you ate 47% of that same thing, even if it was the healthiest food on the planet, it's still going to make you sick.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
exactly the same
Yeah.
topically. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Um,
perfect.
yeah. So too much of a good thing, or too much of a thing that's not meant to be. It's just not meant to be there.
Just don't do it.
Just don't do
Are there any
it.
other myths or fads or things people do or take that I know, again, we could have a whole podcast series about this. Is there something else that stands out that you just want to
Yes.
call out?
So yesterday, this was very much a theme in my clinical practice, was I was talking to some beautiful women who are new clients.
Hmm.
And obviously, I do a lot of education about what we use from the outside in as well.
Yep.
And the biggest theme I was seeing yesterday, which is kind of the biggest theme there is really
Mm.
that we all need to understand, is that I'm seeing a lot of people who are getting like pretty high intensity clinical treatments, so
Hmm.
laser and things like that. And yet, what they're using every day at home is constantly disrupting, abrading, inflaming their skin barrier and skin
Mm.
microbiome. So it's kind of like, if you were going to the gym every day or you're doing CrossFit, but then you're coming home and you're eating McDonald's.
Yeah. You're like,
Like,
of course you need the treatment because the products we're giving you are
yeah,
also increased. And it's not
yeah.
just that, but it's like what you're saying is like it's actually not healing. There's ingredients or in it that are not what you've spoken about is this beautiful, beautiful intricate organ that is the skin, where we're needing to think about water loss or the acid mantle barrier and the microbiome. There are things that aren't nourishing
Mm.
that, so they're actually causing more issues.
That's right. If we're not starting with the foundations and if we're not starting with what we're doing every single day, and that is the most powerful because habits, right? What you do every day is the most powerful. Like you could go on a
Yes.
meditation retreat once a year, good for
Yeah.
you, great.
Yeah.
But if you're meditating for 20 minutes twice a day, every day, that is much more impactful. So,
Yes.
what we do at home, what we're putting on our face every day, twice a day, is the most impactful thing that you can do.
Mm.
Please focus on that, get help with that before going and trying to assault your skin with lots of different aggressive clinical treatments.
Yeah. And I mean, as I've had issues, you've had issues as well with your skin, and it's said with love and empathy, the desperateness, I guess, where you're trying to find that product to help. But there are certain, I guess, more lines of skincare and that are more like corneotherapy conscious, that are actually working with the skin.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
not here to say how, how silly of you to do that. Like,
1000%. It's
yeah,
nobody's fault. Like,
yeah.
marketing is just so confusing
Mm,
and so wrong. And trends, this is the problem with trends as well.
yeah.
And the marketing and what we've been fed is just, like 99% of what is out there has got a preservative in it and it's going to
Mm,
be impacting. It's definitely, definitely, definitely nobody's fault.
no.
It's really challenging to find the right products and the right person to help. And so, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's very conflicting information, with dermatologists recommending Cetaphil,
Mm, yeah.
so it's definitely no one's fault.
Yeah. As someone who has also had cystic acne and I was put on antibiotics, I've been on the pill and I've been on Roaccutane. It pains me to say it, but I also say it saying like, again, I've been where you are.
Yeah.
Can we please talk about how each of these treatments, which is so often prescribed, what they're actually really doing to our bodies, in particular our skin? So what do like antibiotics, like what's your thought on those? I think we know,
Yeah.
but say I think we know, but go for it.
Well, I might throw a little curvy ball in here.
We love those.
So, look, I'm going off actually what is the latest World Health guidelines for antibiotics on this
Mhm.
one in the first instance when I'm talking about this.
Yeah.
So, what they say is that antibiotic resistance for acne is between 55 to 100%.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah, so we had the first introduction of topical antibiotic formulations for acne in the 1970s.
Mhm.
And then the first documented case of, because it used to work for everyone. So this
Mm,
is the thing,
mm.
is it used to work for everyone who had acne, right? It was introduced in the 70s. Everyone thought it was fabulous. But then it was first like the clinically sort of documented antibiotic resistance to for acne was documented in 1983.
Yeah.
So over the course of a decade or so, that antibiotic resistance really became a very, very real thing.
Mm.
And so what the worldwide health guidelines are saying now with regards specifically, I have to be very clear on
Yes.
acne, on antibiotics for acne,
Yeah.
not antibiotics in general, for
Yes.
acne, is that due to the overuse of topical and systemic antibiotics, so topical cream,
Hmm.
oral antibiotics, and because they've been prescribed for such long treatment courses for acne, it has actually led to a worldwide emergence of resistant strains in acne patients.
Yeah.
Biofilms and antibiotic resistance is huge for acne. It is
Yeah.
actually a top 3 public health concern worldwide.
Wow.
Yeah,
That statistic says it all. Like it's all that it's just I'm speechless. Like that's
yeah,
just so fascinating and it's crazy, I guess, when you understand that level of resistance that we have that they're still prescribed. And again, like it's no one's, I get that people are trying to get help and, doctors are trying to help the people that are coming into their office, but goodness me.
yeah. The recommendations from this is that considering the percentage of antimicrobial resistance and how much it's still developing,
Yeah.
topical antibiotics should be avoided at all cost. And they should be restricting oral antibiotics. So people shouldn't be prescribed them for longer than 3 months.
Hmm.
But we know that that's not the case.
Oh, I mean, that was me. Like, I think I was on doxycycline for a year or two. How's that? An oral antibiotic. Here I am being a gut naturopath, just we
We're
all
all
did it.
human.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we all did it.
we're all human, and I've been there. So I would just want to say one thing
Yeah.
though
Yeah.
about that. There are occasions where I will recommend a topical. I mean, I can't prescribe it, but there are instances where I will recommend one
Yeah.
because I have seen a private skin swab and I've seen the the in the lab they'll go ahead and they'll test the antibiotic agents against this specific strain that someone
Mm.
has in their skin against the leading antibiotics, and it'll come up whether it's susceptible or resistant.
Yes.
And if it's a bacteria that we don't want to F around with, then sometimes I'm like, okay, 14 days and then we'll rebuild your skin microbiome.
Yeah. And that is targeted. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about
Yeah.
targeted interventions when we have the information that warrants that particular choice. And it goes for gut stuff as well. There might be something where we're like, we don't want to stuff around with this. You don't want to stuff around when you have a UTI. You don't want to stuff around when you have mastitis or something
Right,
like that, and you've got antibiotics. Like there are very
right.
specific times where you do need it. So it is about, what's going to actually make a difference. And it might be targeted thing. And then, as you said, talking about rebuilding. What about Roaccutane? Let's speak
Look,
about that.
I feel like Roaccutane having a bit of a resurgence at the moment. We're
I
seeing
hope not.
a lot of patients who are coming in and they're wanting support whilst they're on it, which we're more than happy to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they're or maybe they've done 3 rounds and it still hasn't worked. That's something. I never see the people who they've done it and it worked, and
Correct.
they
Yeah.
so I don't see them. I see the people that have done it multiple times and it's still not working for them, and they have felt like they've tried everything else and that's the only option left for them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so Ractane has been used in dermatology since 1982. We know that it has some profound side effects, namely mental health, namely development of inflammatory bowel disease in some patients.
Mm,
Yeah, those are
pretty
two
significant.
pretty significant
Yeah.
ones. Yeah, yeah. It's a category X drug. You can't get any stronger or more serious than a category X.
Yeah.
It's a known teratogen, which means that, it has known significant impact on a fetus.
Mm.
And so what we do know is that it modifies the goblet cells in our gut. So it alters the mucus. So what I say to people is, the action that Roaccutane has in the skin is it kind of like atrophying or shrinking the follicle so that it can't be so problematic. It's looking at it in that very one-dimensional approach that we talked about, where everything happens in the follicle. That's the only source of the problem. And so it's
Yeah.
shutting that down,
Yeah.
not obviously treating the root cause. And so I say to my clients, it's doing that in the skin, but it's doing that in the gut as well.
Yes.
So it's atrophying modifying the goblet cells, which produce mucus, which we know we need. It's a beautiful protective layer. We know that we have lots of good bacteria that live in
Mm.
the mucosal surfaces. So we know that we're going to need to support the
Mm.
mucosa of the gut if someone is on it. We know we need to support the liver.
Yeah.
Cholesterol, so about 25% of patients who are on Roaccutane will have hyperlipidemia as a result of Roaccutane.
Yeah. Wow.
And there are the common deficiencies are B12, folic acid, and vitamin D as
Mm.
well.
Mm.
So yeah.
And it's important, like you said, that again, that you can work with people that are on this. And even if they are choosing to finish the treatment, that there is support that can happen. There is an integrative approach that can happen to hopefully offset some of those very significant and well documented side effects, which in turn can cause other issues, which, we don't want to prevent that as much as
Mm.
possible. What about the pill? How does
Mm.
that, what's happening there?
Okay, so my biggest thing,
Big sigh. Here we go.
I can say this because I was addicted to the pill for my skin for a very long
Yeah,
time.
sure. Yeah.
Okay, I can say
You're
this.
qualified to chat about it.
But why on earth would we take something to fix our acne
Mm,
that's biggest known side effect is causing post-pill acne?
that is the question, isn't it?
That's where I'm at with it. So
Yep. Yep. And you've said so many other things in terms of the complexity as to what causes acne. So
yeah.
yeah, it's the pill will likely not be addressing all of those inflammatory factors that we've spoken about. And it does make you question it. And again, with love and empathy, we understand people doing that. Again, I've been on the pill for my skin. So I'm in that same boat. We understand that people are using it non-skin related, and it is for contraceptive things. And hopefully, if anyone is watching or listening and they are, thinking, oh gosh, I don't know if I should come off the pill, that what you're saying as well is that you don't have to necessarily have that post-pill acne if you're working with someone that can help understand other causes and can maybe smooth that transition.
My wish is that
Mm.
everyone had their eyes wide open walking in, because I
Yeah.
think we all need to have medical autonomy, and I'm
Mm.
really big on my clients making their own decisions.
Yeah,
But don't we all want to make our decisions when we've got all of the information instead
definitely.
of finding out after the fact?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, this medication can cause significant melasma, which is pigmentation. This medication can actually cause acne by the post-pill sebum surge.
Mm, mm,
This medication can increase copper, which can cause acne. Like
yeah.
if it were me and I take this approach with all my clients, you should have medical autonomy and you should make your own decisions, but they should be education based. They should be education based decisions.
Yeah.
And so I see my job as holding no judgment ever at all,
No,
but always giving people the information so that they can choose their own journey.
absolutely. Yeah. Judgment free, that's what we need to be because we've been there. We know what it's like. So, what would be if someone has acne today, what would be something that they can start doing right now to start helping their skin?
Yeah. So I think that we really need to, we've talked a lot about testing, we've talked a lot about gut,
Mm.
but the thing that can't be skipped is the foundations.
Hmm.
And so you really need to address the foundations before you can move on to the deeper healing work of like gut protocols and things like that. And so what we want to look at is, are you getting enough sleep? Are
Yep.
you getting enough sleep, 8 to 10 hours? Are you adequately hydrated? Are you having, 2.5 liters of filtered or boxed water from the supermarket daily? Are you having enough protein, and are you balancing out your blood sugar levels by having enough protein? Are you having enough fiber from fruits and veggies to support your gut? Are you having enough healthy fats to support hormone production? Are you using things topically that you need to have some guidance around to switch them out for things that are going to be more supportive?
Hmm.
Could you put that double wear foundation to the side and switch it out for a mineral-based foundation and still wear foundation every single day, but know that it's not impacting
Yeah.
on your skin? Those are the things that can you cut out coffee until we've cleared up your skin because it's
Yeah.
driving excess cortisol, driving insulin.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things that are really easy for everyone to implement. Not
Yeah.
easy, but they're accessible.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
accessible for
Yeah.
everyone to implement if you're not in a place where you can work with a practitioner,
Hmm.
or if you're not in a place where you're able to have any pathology testing just yet. Those are the foundations,
Yeah.
that need to be consistently met.
Yeah. And I think, if people are there going, oh, yeah, I need to change that, change that, change that, change that. And you're like, all of a sudden, there's a list of 20 things that they can see that they can do. Don't get overwhelmed in a sense where we want to make this sustainable. So start with one, and just as soon as that becomes really, second nature, add on another. So we want this to be all about sustainable strategies. We don't want it to be a sprint. And then after 6 months, you feel burnt out because what you're doing is essentially unsustainable. Okay, last question. And I could have had a million more, but I'm going to make it the last one is so if someone has acne, your number one piece of advice to them, what is it?
Number one piece of advice. I would say my number one piece of advice is to focus on your morning routine, as we
Mm.
referenced before, because I really do feel that that can set you up for success, or it can hold you back with your skin in a really profound way. So
Mm.
I would encourage everyone to look at what they're doing in the first hour of the day.
I love that. And I actually love that it wasn't anything to do with testing or topicals off. It was
Mhm.
actually, again, lifestyle based, which is what we're
Mm.
always coming back to is what we're doing on the daily. Asha, we need to have about a million more episodes.
Anytime.
I have enjoyed this. I think there's lots of science in there, so there's lots of things people can dig their teeth into, and it was really empowering because it just highlighted the completely complex and fascinating organ of the skin, and I hope has given people some hope in terms of if they're
Mm,
feeling like they're up against a wall and they don't know where to turn to get some
mm,
changes in their skin,
mm,
that there are things that they probably haven't tried.
mm.
If people want to contact you, work with you, learn from you, what is the best way that they can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got an Instagram account, so at acne.naturopath. And then the website is www.acne/naturopath.com. And Insta's fun. Everything's happening on Insta. I love sharing educational content.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like sharing spicy content as well. I think, like we need a bit
We
more.
love to shake it up.
We love to
We love
shake it up.
I will put those links in the show notes as well. So people can just scroll down and click on those and it'll take you straight to Asha. And you can keep learning from her.
Can I
So
just say one more thing? Because you
of
really,
course.
really hit a chord for me when you talked
Oh
about
yeah.
hope.
Yeah.
And for me, that is the most important thing I would like to convey today
Mm,
is that most people who've been struggling with a chronic skin condition or acne for many years, they really, really come to a place where they lose hope. And
mm.
I want to say, as someone who treats acne day in, day out, and the healing is there and it is for everyone and it is totally possible. It just, it is a very misunderstood area, and seeing the right people will absolutely transform that for you.
Oh, I love that. We all want a bit of hope. So
Yeah.
thank you for being that hope to people today. We all needed it. And I'm sure we'll see you in the potty again. So thank you so
Yeah,
much.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thanks for tuning into Gutsy Talks. I hope today's episode left you feeling inspired to take the next step in your gut health journey. If you're ready to dive deeper, head over to rachellarson.com.au. There's a range of courses and resources waiting for you. If you loved this episode, I'd be so grateful if you shared it with others who might benefit from this information. And so you don't miss out on future Gutsy Talks, be sure to hit follow and leave a review. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'm Rachel Larson, and I can't wait to connect with you again for our next Gutsy Talk.